Imagine standing in the middle of your life, looking around, and realizing you have no idea where you're going. You feel stuck, you feel confused, you feel like everyone else has it figured out, like everyone's moving forward while you're just floating. And maybe you've been carrying that feeling for a while now, quiet, heavy, unspoken. But let me ask you something. How long are you going to sit in that fog before you do something about it? Because feeling lost doesn't mean you're broken. It doesn't mean you've failed. It means you're awake. It means something inside of you refuses to stay numb, and that part of you is trying to rise. The Stoics understood this long before we did. If you're tired of wandering, if you're done pretending you're okay, if you're ready to stop spinning your wheels and start walking with direction, even if you don't know exactly where you're headed, then this video is for you. Because today, you're not just going to feel seen. You're going to be reminded that clarity isn't something you wait for, it's something you build, step by step, breath by breath, decision by decision. And if you're the kind of person who's ready to grow through discomfort, to turn reflection into action, and to live by timeless values instead of fleeting trends, then this space is for you. Subscribe to commit to your own becoming, to choose wisdom over noise, strength over confusion, and purpose over drifting. Let's begin. 1. Clarity comes after action, not before. You ever notice how most people sit around waiting for the fog to lift before they make a move? Like they're waiting for the perfect plan, the perfect moment, or some cosmic green light that says, "Okay, now you're allowed to live." But life doesn't work like that. The people who look like they've got it all together, they didn't start with clarity. They started with motion. They began messy. They stumbled. They tried things. And in that movement, they found direction. That's the paradox most of us don't want to face, that you have to act before you're ready. Clarity isn't the entry fee for action, it's the reward. It's what shows up after you've been bold enough to get moving. The Stoics understood this deeply. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." What he meant was that the world doesn't owe you certainty, but you owe yourself a decision, a choice, and you'll never uncover your full potential by sitting still and thinking about it. Our minds are tricky. They convince us that if we could just figure it all out beforehand, the risks, the outcomes, the path, then we'd feel ready. But we won't. Thinking too much becomes a trap. It gives the illusion of progress while keeping you paralyzed. That's why the Stoics emphasized praxis, action grounded in principle. Epictetus didn't write lengthy theories for the sake of sounding wise. He taught his students to live philosophy, to do the right thing, even if it was hard, even if they were unsure. You need motion, just one small, honest step in any direction that feels slightly better than standing still. Read one page, go for a walk, apply to one job, say no to one distraction. That's it. That's how momentum starts. And momentum is sacred. It's what turns confusion into insight, fog into path, and hesitation into courage. Think of it like walking through a pitch-black room. You can't see anything. You don't know where the walls are or how far the exit is. If you stand still and wait for the lights to come on, you'll stay trapped forever. But if you take a single step, even if you bump into something, now you know something new. Maybe you find the wall. Maybe you find the door. Either way, you've moved from ignorance to knowledge. That's progress. That's how clarity works. Not as a gift from the heavens, but as something earned through effort. And look, it won't always feel pretty. You might doubt yourself. You might make mistakes. But guess what? That's part of it. The Stoics didn't aim to be perfect. They aimed to be disciplined. They aimed to live in alignment with reason, not in search of guarantees. Seneca said, "If a man knows not to which port he sails, no wind is favorable." But that doesn't mean you just wait around until you know the port. It means you pick a direction, start sailing, and adjust your sails along the way. You make peace with the fact that motion, any motion, is better than paralysis. And the longer you wait, the more the doubt builds. You start asking questions that don't help. What if I fail? What if I choose wrong? What if people judge me? But those questions come from fear, not from wisdom. The Stoics didn't concern themselves with the things outside their control. They focused on the things they could influence, their choices, their reactions, their character. That's your power. Not in figuring out every possible outcome, but in owning your next move. Don't wait until you feel like doing the thing. Do the thing, and the feeling will follow. So if you're sitting in your room right now, stuck in your head, hoping for a breakthrough, this is it. Not some mystical lightning bolt. This. The realization that nothing changes until you do. That clarity, confidence, and purpose don't arrive in stillness. They arrive in sweat, in effort, in imperfect action. The voice in your head saying, "But I'm not ready yet." That's not wisdom. That's fear wearing a disguise. And you don't owe fear your future. The Stoics trained daily, in thoughts, in choices, in restraint, in action. They didn't ask for certainty, they asked, what is the right thing to do right now? That's a question worth building your life around, not what feels good, not what guarantees success, just what's right now, because once you take that step, no matter how small, you change your identity. You're no longer the one who's stuck. You're the one who moves forward, even in the fog. So what do you do next? Anything, one thing. Doesn't matter how small it is, just let it matter. Because clarity doesn't come to those who wait. It comes to those who walk. And when you walk long enough, even through the mess, even through the questions, something incredible happens. The fog starts to lift. The path starts to appear. And you realize clarity was never missing. It was waiting for you to begin. 2. You don't have to have an opinion on everything. You ever feel like the world is just loud? Like everything and everyone is demanding your attention, your reaction, your opinion, right now? Social media blows up with some new drama every day. Group chats fill with hot takes and outrage. Everyone's picking a side, weighing in, saying something, anything, just to feel relevant. And somewhere in the middle of that chaos, you start to feel this weird pressure. This idea that you're supposed to care about everything. That if you don't speak up, don't post, don't react, you're being passive. Or worse, ignorant. But here's the truth nobody tells you. You don't have to have an opinion on everything. Not every conversation needs your voice. Not every issue needs your input. And letting go of that pressure isn't apathy, it's wisdom. The Stoics talked about this centuries ago, long before the internet existed. Epictetus said, "We are not disturbed by things, but by the views we take of things." Think about that for a second. It's not the event itself that messes with your peace. It's how you interpret it, the story you tell yourself about it. And most of the stories we tell ourselves, most of our stress, come from opinions we didn't even choose. They were handed to us, pushed onto us, or absorbed unconsciously because everyone around us is yelling. The more you carry other people's opinions, the heavier your mind becomes. And soon your mental space isn't even yours anymore. It's just an echo chamber of what everyone else thinks, feels, and expects you to feel too. But here's the power move most people miss. Silence. Choosing not to respond. Choosing not to weigh in. Not because you have nothing to say, but because you know not every hill is worth dying on. That's not avoidance. That's emotional discipline. That's what the Stoics called ataraxia. peace of mind through detachment. Marcus Aurelius, who ran an empire filled with noise, politics, and backstabbing, once reminded himself, "You always have the option of having no opinion." That's a line worth memorizing. You always have the option to say, "This isn't mine to carry." And let's be honest, a lot of what we form opinions about, we barely understand. We skim headlines. We hear half a conversation. We take a tweet out of context, and suddenly we're experts. But real wisdom isn't about knowing everything. It's about knowing the limits of your knowledge. Socrates was famous for saying, "I know that I know nothing." And that humility, that awareness, it made him one of the wisest minds in history, because he knew that speaking just to be heard isn't strength. It's ego. And the ego, oh, it loves chaos. It loves being right. It loves arguing and reacting and correcting everyone who disagrees. But what does that actually get you? Maybe a brief sense of superiority, but more often it just drains you. Carl Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." So if you feel triggered by someone's post or offended by someone's opinion, pause. Ask yourself, is this really about them? Or is it uncovering something in me I need to explore? That's what the Stoic does. They pause, they zoom out, they ask, does this deserve my energy? Does this help me grow? Does this align with the person I'm trying to become? Most of the time the answer is no. Most of the time reacting is just a distraction from doing the real inner work, the quiet work of building discipline, staying grounded, and sharpening your character. You know what else is interesting? The quieter you become, the more clearly you can hear your own thoughts. And that's rare today. We live in an era of endless commentary, non-stop opinions, and emotional noise. But clarity is born in silence, in choosing your thoughts instead of inheriting them, in protecting your mental space like it's sacred, because it is. And look, none of this means you should be passive or detached from life. It doesn't mean you shouldn't care about the world or speak up for what matters. But it does mean being intentional. Stoicism isn't about indifference. It's about discernment, knowing when to speak, why to speak, and what kind of energy you're speaking from. You're not here to argue every point. You're here to live in alignment. You're not here to be the loudest in the room. You're here to be the most centered. So here's the challenge. The next time you feel the urge to comment, to clap back, to drop your opinion just because everyone else is, pause, breathe, ask yourself, do I really need to say this? Is this rooted in values or just ego? Is this helping or just noise? If it's not worth it, let it go. Say nothing. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. And more importantly, that's freedom. Because here's what you'll start to notice when you stop reacting to everything. Your mind gets quieter. Your time frees up. Your energy multiplies. You stop carrying battles that don't belong to you. And in that space, something beautiful starts to grow. Clarity, self-awareness, and inner strength. You become a person of peace in a world addicted to drama. And that's rare. That's power. That's Stoic. You don't have to have an opinion on everything. You don't have to chase every argument or justify every silence. You can hold your ground without raising your voice. You can be informed without being consumed. You can be present without being reactive. That's how you stay grounded. That's how you stay sane. And most of all, that's how you stay true to yourself. 3. Not every responsibility is yours to carry. Let me ask you something honest. When was the last time you said yes to something that drained you? Not because you wanted to, not because it aligned with your purpose, but because you felt like you had to. Maybe you didn't want to disappoint someone. Maybe you didn't want to look selfish. Maybe you just didn't want the awkward silence that follows a no, but deep down you knew it wasn't your job to fix it. Still, you took it on, and now, here you are, buried under responsibilities that were never yours to begin with. It's a quiet kind of exhaustion, isn't it? The kind that creeps into your bones. Because carrying what isn't yours doesn't just wear down your energy, it chips away at your identity. We live in a culture that glorifies being helpful, being available, being everything for everyone. We're taught to say yes, to step up, to sacrifice. And while there's beauty in service, there's also danger in losing yourself to it. The Stoics warned us about this a long time ago. Marcus Aurelius said, "If it's not right, don't do it. If it's not true, don't say it." Simple words, but powerful, because they speak to discernment, the ability to know which duties are yours and which are not. And that discernment is what separates a person of strength from a person stretched so thin they barely remember who they are. Here's a truth we all need to hear. Not every responsibility is yours to carry. You are not the emotional janitor of your family. You are not the fix-it-all friend. You are not a replacement for someone else's self-awareness, growth, or maturity. You are allowed to protect your time. You're allowed to say, "That's not my job." That's not selfish, that's wisdom. And honestly, it's also sanity. Carl Jung once said, "The greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of its parents." That hits deep, because it doesn't just apply to children. Many of us are carrying the unmet dreams, expectations, and broken patterns of the people around us. We inherit roles we never agreed to. We feel guilt for things we didn't cause. And the worst part, we rarely question it. We just take it on, quietly, automatically, as if it's our duty to patch everyone else's leaks while we drown silently in our own. But the Stoic doesn't live that way. The Stoic draws a clear line between what is within their control and what is not, between what is theirs and what belongs to someone else. Epictetus taught, "Some things are up to us and some things are not." That one idea alone can free you, because the moment you realize that another person's choices, emotions, or messes aren't yours to solve, that's the moment you begin to reclaim your peace. Let's be clear though, this doesn't mean turning your back on people. It doesn't mean becoming cold or distant. It means showing up with healthy responsibility instead of toxic obligation. It means helping without losing yourself in the process, saying yes when your soul agrees and no when it doesn't. Because you can't be of service to anyone if you're constantly betraying yourself. Psychologist and author Brené Brown once said, "Daring to set boundaries is about having the courage to love ourselves even when we risk disappointing others." That's the hard part, right? The guilt, the fear of being called selfish or difficult. But what's the cost of always saying yes? Burnout, resentment, quiet anger that builds in the background like pressure in a pipe, and eventually it bursts. You don't have to wait for that moment. You don't have to reach rock bottom to make a change. Start asking yourself, is this my role? Is this truly mine to carry? If the answer is no, let it go. If the task, the pressure, the emotional labor doesn't align with your values, your energy, or your season of life, put it down. It doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you a person with clarity. Seneca said, "No person has the power to have everything they want, but it is in their power not to want what they don't need." The same logic applies to responsibility. You don't have to take on what isn't yours, and you don't have to feel guilty about protecting your bandwidth. The people who truly love you, respect you, and understand themselves, they'll get it. And the ones who don't, that's not your burden either. But here's the catch. Reclaiming your energy takes courage. It takes honesty. It takes learning how to sit with the discomfort of letting someone else sit in their discomfort. And that's not easy, especially if you're used to being the peacemaker, the fixer, the one who holds it all together. But guess what? That's not your job either. Your job is to hold yourself together, to live in alignment with who you are, not who everyone else needs you to be. When you start choosing what's yours to carry and releasing what's not, something changes. Your body relaxes. Your mind gets clearer. You start making better decisions. You begin showing up to your life instead of being pulled in 1,000 directions by other people's chaos. And the irony is, that's when you actually become more helpful, more grounded, more present, more impactful, because you're coming from a place of strength, not survival. So take a moment, reflect. What roles have you taken on that no longer serve you? What responsibilities have you inherited that don't belong to you? Whose weight are you carrying on your back while your own needs are buried beneath the surface? It's time to return that weight, not out of coldness, but out of respect, for yourself and for the other person's growth. Because sometimes the kindest thing you can do is step back and let someone else carry their own load. Remember this, your value doesn't come from how much you carry. It comes from how deeply you live. The Stoic doesn't drown in false duty. The Stoic stays light in a heavy world by choosing wisely, living simply, and walking with purpose. And so can you. 4. Emotions are signals, not instructions. Some days, your emotions hit like a tidal wave. 1 minute you're fine, sipping your coffee, checking your phone, and the next, your chest is tight, your jaw is clenched, your thoughts are racing. Maybe it's something someone said. Maybe it's a memory that came out of nowhere. Maybe it's just one of those days where everything feels heavier than it should. And the first instinct? React, snap back, run, shut down, do something, anything to escape how you feel. But here's the thing. Nobody teaches us growing up. Feeling something doesn't mean you have to act on it. Your emotions are valid, yes. They're real, but they're not the boss of you. We're raised in a world that swings between two extremes. Either bury your feelings and tough it out, or let your emotions justify every decision you make. But Stoicism, and modern psychology too, offers a third path. It says, feel it, understand it, then choose your response. Carl Jung once said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Emotions, if left unexamined, become invisible drivers of our choices. But when we become aware of them, we reclaim our power. Think of your emotions like visitors. They show up unannounced, sometimes loud and annoying, sometimes quiet and sad. But you don't have to give them the keys to your house. You can invite them in, sit with them, listen, but you don't have to let them take over. That's what emotional discipline looks like. It's not suppression, it's observation. It's the pause between stimulus and response. The moment you step back from your feelings and say, okay, I see you, now let me think about what comes next. Epictetus said, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. And nowhere is this more true than with emotion. Life will throw things at you that you didn't expect, didn't ask for, and can't control. But what you do get to control is how you meet those moments. That's where your freedom lives. Not in denying how you feel, but in choosing how you behave despite how you feel. Let's be real. Anger feels powerful. It gives you the illusion of control. But often, underneath that anger is something softer. Hurt, shame, powerlessness. And when you react out of that first wave of emotion, you often make things worse. You say things you regret. You push people away. You burn bridges that didn't need to be burned. The Stoic doesn't see anger as strength. They see it as a signal, a red flag that something in you needs attention, not explosion. Seneca, in his essay on anger, warned that no plague has cost the human race more than anger, not because anger is evil, but because unchecked, it takes everything down with it, including you. Sadness, too, can become a trap. If you mistake it for a permanent truth rather than a passing experience, you begin to build your life around it. You withdraw, you lose momentum, you start to believe the story that things won't change. But sadness isn't a life sentence, it's a message. It says, something in you needs care, and that's okay. You can sit with sadness without becoming it. You can feel down without losing direction. Clarity doesn't come from avoiding feelings. It comes from listening to them and then choosing not to let them define you. Anxiety works the same way. It convinces you that something's wrong, even when nothing is. It floods your system with adrenaline, spins worst-case scenarios through your mind, makes you want to do something, anything, just to feel like you're in control again. But often, the most powerful thing you can do is pause. Breathe. Let the storm pass without chasing it. This doesn't mean you'll get it right every time. You're going to mess up. You're going to overreact. You're going to say or do something you wish you hadn't. That's human. But the goal isn't perfection. The goal is awareness. The more you practice that pause, the space between what you feel and what you do, the more control you build. And slowly, day by day, you become the kind of person who can feel everything, but still choose with wisdom. The Stoics didn't want you to be numb. They wanted you to be awake, to feel deeply, think clearly, and act purposefully, to stop letting emotions drive the bus while you sit in the back seat, hoping things don't crash. You're meant to be the driver, and that means learning to listen without reacting, to feel without being ruled, to choose clarity over chaos, even when your feelings scream otherwise. So next time a strong emotion hits, and it will, do this. Pause, notice it, name it. Then ask yourself, what is this feeling trying to tell me? And what is the wisest thing I can do right now? That simple act of questioning gives you back your power. You stop being a puppet of your emotions and start becoming the kind of person who can stand tall in any storm. Because that's the real flex. Not pretending you don't feel, not exploding every time you do, but mastering the middle ground, that calm, steady place where you acknowledge the wave and choose not to drown in it. Your emotions are not enemies, but they are not commanders either. They are signals. You decide what to do next, and that decision, that's where your freedom begins. 5. Peace starts with subtracting, not adding. It's strange, isn't it, how we've been convinced that the solution to feeling overwhelmed is to do more. Feeling stressed? Download another productivity app. Feeling lost? Set more goals. Feeling empty? Fill your calendar. From the moment we wake up, we're hit with this subtle message. If your life doesn't feel right, it's because you're not doing enough. You're not grinding hard enough, not achieving fast enough, not keeping up. So we pile on. Habits, hacks, tasks, books, podcasts, thinking if we just find the right combination, peace will finally show up. But it never does, because real peace doesn't come from adding, it comes from subtracting. The Stoics understood this truth long before we turned busy into a badge of honor. Seneca said, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, who is poor." That craving for more success, more validation, more certainty, that's what keeps you spinning, and you don't even realize it's a trap until you're drowning in your own to-do list and wondering why your chest feels tight every morning. It's not because you're lazy, it's because you're overloaded. And what you really need isn't more structure, it's space. Carl Jung, the father of analytical psychology, put it this way: People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. We fill our lives with noise, busyness, distractions, chaos, to avoid the discomfort of stillness. Because stillness forces us to confront what's really there. And sometimes what's there isn't pretty. Regret, fear, unresolved tension. But here's the paradox. The only way to actually free yourself from that inner chaos is to stop drowning it in noise. You have to create room, and that starts with subtraction. Look at your life for a moment. Not the version you post online, the real one. How much of it is filled with things that don't serve you? How many apps do you open just to escape your thoughts? How many conversations do you have just to avoid silence? How many commitments do you keep out of guilt, not purpose? The Stoics taught that freedom isn't about having everything, it's about needing less. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you seek tranquility, do less." He wasn't talking about being lazy, he was talking about precision, about trimming the unnecessary so that what remains actually matters. Here's the hard truth. Most of your stress doesn't come from the amount of things you're doing. It comes from the misalignment of what you're doing. You're chasing things that don't match who you are. You're saying yes to things you don't believe in. You're pretending that productivity equals peace. But it doesn't. You can check off every box on your list and still feel hollow inside. Because peace isn't something you achieve, it's something you uncover by peeling back everything that doesn't belong. Imagine your mind like a cluttered room. You keep trying to organize the mess, buying new bins and folders, thinking that if you just rearrange it better, it'll feel peaceful. But what you really need to do is throw stuff out. That old resentment, trash it. That toxic friendship, donate it to the past. That pressure to be everything to everyone, toss it. Real peace starts when you make space for it. And no, this isn't easy. Subtraction can feel threatening because sometimes the things you need to let go of are things you've used to define yourself. The job title that no longer excites you, the identity that's rooted in pleasing others, the habits that once helped you cope but now keep you stuck. But letting go doesn't mean losing, it means growing. Carl Jung also said, "We cannot change anything until we accept it." So the first step is being honest about what no longer fits, what no longer serves, what's just taking up space without adding any meaning. Start small. Don't try to overhaul everything overnight. Subtraction is a quiet practice, a daily discipline. It might look like deleting one app, saying no to one invitation, canceling one obligation that your heart was never really in. And every time you remove something that drains you, you reclaim energy for something that builds you. That's the game. That's the shift. The Stoics lived this truth. They believed in simplicity, not as an aesthetic, but as a way of life. They weren't chasing hustle or applause. They were cultivating stillness, clarity, and character. Epictetus said, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." That hits different when you've spent years chasing more and still feel like something's missing. Because maybe what's missing is the silence beneath all the noise, the calm beneath all the chaos, the self that's been buried under layers of shoulds and musts and what will people think. We're so busy chasing everything we might want that we forget to ask what we actually need. And often, what we need isn't more, it's less. Less comparison, less distraction, less pressure, less pretending. Peace begins when you stop filling every gap, when you stop trying to fix your life by stuffing it with more. So here's the challenge. Look at your life like a sculptor looks at a block of marble. Don't ask, "What do I need to add?" Ask, "What needs to be removed?" Michelangelo didn't create the statue of David by piling on clay. He revealed it by chipping away everything that wasn't David. That's how peace is created too. not by becoming more, but by becoming less of what you're not. And if this sounds counterintuitive, good. It means you're starting to unlearn the lie that peace is something you buy, build, or earn. It's not. It's something you return to. And the only way to return to it is to subtract. So pause. Look around. What are you carrying that doesn't belong to you anymore? What can you put down? What can you let go of? Not out of weakness, but out of wisdom. The Stoics lived light because they chose intentionally. You can do the same. You can stop chasing and start clearing. You can stop adding and start removing. And in that empty space, you might just find the one thing you've been looking for this whole time. 6. Life doesn't ask for permission. There's a moment that hits everyone sooner or later when you realize the world isn't going to slow down just because you're not ready. Life doesn't pause for you to catch your breath. It doesn't send a warning before it turns everything upside down. And that realization, it stings, because we're taught to believe that if we just plan well enough, work hard enough, think far enough ahead, we can avoid the unexpected. But reality doesn't work that way. Life moves, it shifts, it breaks, it rebuilds. And it does all of this without asking you if the timing's good. You've probably felt it before. The job you thought was stable suddenly disappears. The relationship you built your future on dissolves. The health you took for granted gets shaken. Or maybe it's something quieter. The feeling that the life you're living isn't the one you planned, and you're not sure when it started drifting. That's what makes it so jarring. Not the event itself, but the lack of control. The sudden reminder that you're not in charge of everything, and maybe never were. Change, even painful, unexpected change, isn't a failure. It's part of the fabric of life. And instead of resisting it or resenting it, maybe the better move is to work with it, to become more flexible, to accept that growth often looks like discomfort, like endings, like a door closing before you even had a chance to knock. And this applies to every area of life. You can't stop people from walking away. People will leave. Not always because they want to hurt you. Sometimes because they need to find themselves. Sometimes because they weren't meant to stay. That hurts, sure. But it also clears space. Seneca once wrote, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end." Loss isn't just an ending, it's also a doorway. And if you keep staring at the one that closed, you'll miss what's already opening. Same with plans. You can create the most detailed timeline for your goals, 5-year plan, 10-year plan, every milestone mapped out. But life will still surprise you. An opportunity you never expected will show up, or a detour will teach you more than the destination ever could. And if you're too attached to how things should be, you'll miss how beautiful they could be. Flexibility is not weakness, it's wisdom. It's saying, I know what I want, but I'm also open to where this might go. And when things fall apart, as they sometimes do, that's not the universe punishing you. That's the universe reminding you that no structure is permanent. Nothing is guaranteed. And that might sound terrifying, but it's also freeing. Because once you stop expecting the world to operate on your schedule, you start learning how to respond, not just react. You learn how to hold your center even when the ground shakes. Sometimes what you need to overlook is your expectation that life will go exactly as planned. Sometimes you need to release your grip on what should be, so you can show up fully for what is. That's not giving up, that's growing up. The Stoics taught that what matters most is your character, not your circumstances. They knew that strength isn't shown when everything is calm, but when everything's falling apart and you stay grounded anyway. That's the ultimate test. Not whether life bends to your will, but whether you keep your integrity when it doesn't. So, what does that look like, practically? It means not waiting for the perfect moment to begin. Start now, even if you're scared, even if it's messy, because waiting for certainty is just fear in disguise. It means building habits and mindsets that prepare you for the unknown, not because you want chaos, but because you respect the fact that it will come. It means letting go of the illusion that control equals safety. It doesn't. Control is fragile. What's real is resilience. The inner calm that comes from knowing that whatever happens, you'll handle it. Not because you're invincible, but because you've trained your mind to stay steady when things aren't. And maybe that's the most important takeaway of all. Peace doesn't come from mastering life. It comes from mastering yourself, from shifting your focus inward, from remembering, like the Stoics did, that your mind is your most powerful territory, that while you can't change the wind, you can always adjust the sails. So if life isn't asking for your permission, stop waiting to be ready. Stop waiting for everything to line up perfectly before you move. Instead, move, adapt, respond. Not because you control the world, but because you've learned how to control yourself. Life moves fast. It changes suddenly. It surprises you when you least expect it. But that doesn't mean you're powerless. It just means you need to shift your mindset. From resistance to response. From fear to flexibility. From waiting to doing. And that shift, that quiet internal shift, is where your real strength begins. 7. You don't need more time. You need less distraction. Ever notice how a whole day can slip through your fingers without anything meaningful getting done? You sit down with the best of intentions. Maybe it's to work on that project, get back in shape, call someone you care about, or just spend a little time on your goals. But then, the hours vanish. You look up and it's already evening, and somehow, despite being busy, you feel unfulfilled. It's not that you didn't have time. It's that your time got eaten alive by distractions, and most of them were so small, so subtle, you didn't even see them happening. Let's be honest, time is not your enemy. You've got the same 24 hours as everyone else. What's getting in your way isn't the number of hours in your day, it's the number of things pulling at your attention. Stoic philosopher Seneca said it perfectly. It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. That quote should rattle you a bit, because most of us aren't short on time. We're short on focus. We're letting life leak out in all directions, not from big, obvious holes, but from little cracks we pretend don't matter. Think about your phone for a second. How many times have you checked it today without even realizing? A quick scroll here, a mindless video there, a notification that leads to 15 minutes of wandering. It's not just about screen time, it's about attention fragmentation. Every time you switch tasks, every time you let your brain hop from one thing to another, you lose a little bit of your focus. You dilute your energy. Carl Jung once said, "Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes." But you can't look inward if your mind is always looking outward, chasing noise, feeding impulses, reacting instead of choosing. Here's the truth that most people don't want to hear. You don't need more time. You need fewer distractions. You need to be ruthless about what gets access to your attention, because attention is life. What you give it to, you become. If your mind is constantly scattered, it's not just your productivity that suffers. It's your presence, your relationships, your creativity, your peace. And it's not that you're lazy or broken. It's that the modern world is designed to keep you distracted. The algorithms, the ads, the endless options, they're engineered to hijack your brain. So what's the Stoic move? It's clarity, it's intention, it's removing the excess so the essential can rise to the surface. Marcus Aurelius, who ruled an empire and still found time to reflect deeply every day, wrote, Ask yourself at every moment, is this necessary? That question alone can change your life. Is this necessary? This app, this conversation, this task, this worry, is it actually necessary? If it's not, cut it. Don't just try to manage your time better. Guard your attention like it's sacred, because it is. And don't confuse being busy with being effective. Busyness is easy. It gives you the illusion of progress. But real progress requires depth, and depth requires stillness, focus, and the courage to say no to distractions that feel good in the short term, but rob you in the long run. We often chase dopamine instead of meaning, and then wonder why we feel drained even after a full day. When you stop letting every little ping pull you out of the present moment, you start to reclaim your mind. You start to build momentum, not just in work, but in life. But here's the kicker. Reclaiming your attention takes effort. It means setting boundaries that feel uncomfortable. It means uninstalling apps you're addicted to. It means choosing boredom over stimulation sometimes, and letting your mind breathe. The Stoics weren't distracted people. They lived simply, with intention. They valued their days because they understood their days were their lives. If you waste a day, you're not just wasting time, you're wasting you. So what can you do? Start small. Pick 1 hour a day and protect it fiercely. No phone, no multitasking. Just focused effort on something that matters to you. See what happens. Notice how it feels to be fully present with one task, one thought, one goal. It's harder than it sounds, but it's also powerful. Because attention is like a muscle. The more you train it, the stronger it gets. The more you stretch it across meaningless things, the weaker it becomes. You don't need to overhaul your life overnight, but you do need to stop pretending that more time is the answer. The real answer is less noise, less reaction, less numbing, and more ownership over what actually gets to live in your head. That's where transformation begins, not in some magical future when your schedule clears up, but in this moment, right now, where you choose to either be consumed or to take control. Remember what Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And mastery begins with attention. If you can't control where your mind goes, then you're not really in control of your life. But the good news is, you can take it back, one choice at a time. So the next time you hear yourself saying, "I just need more time," stop, reframe it. Say, "I need more focus," because that's what really unlocks change. That's what leads to clarity, to purpose, to momentum. Not more hours, just fewer distractions. That's the Stoic way, and it's available to you right now. 8. Being disliked can be a sign. You're doing the right thing. There's a strange tension that lives in all of us, a deep desire to be true to ourselves while also craving approval from others. It's natural. We're wired for connection. Since the beginning of time, being accepted by the tribe meant safety, survival, belonging. But somewhere along the way, that survival instinct evolved into something much more subtle and much more dangerous. People-pleasing. We start to bend. We edit ourselves. We water down our thoughts, mute our truth, and smile through things we don't agree with, all in the name of being liked. But here's the uncomfortable truth. If everyone likes you, you're probably not living honestly. You've felt it before. That quiet hesitation before saying what you really think. That moment where your gut says, "Speak up," but your fear says, "Stay small." And maybe you choose silence. Again. Not because you don't have a voice, but because you don't want to rock the boat. You don't want to be the one who's too much, too different, too honest. But every time you betray yourself just to avoid being disliked, you lose a little bit of self-respect. And that cost? It adds up. The Stoics didn't chase popularity, they chased virtue. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The approval of the crowd is worthless. Only your own integrity matters." That wasn't arrogance, it was discipline. Because living in alignment with your principles means being okay with the fact that not everyone will understand you. Some people will be threatened by your clarity. Some will call your confidence arrogance. Some will distance themselves because your growth reminds them of their stagnation. Let them. Carl Jung put it this way: "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But becoming who you truly are requires you to let go of who the world wants you to be." And that's hard, because when you start showing up fully, unapologetically, some people will fall away. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because they were only ever drawn to the version of you that made them comfortable. And yet, this is where the power lives. In choosing truth over comfort, in choosing self-respect over being liked, in choosing to live your life according to your values, not the expectations of a culture obsessed with image, validation, and fitting in. Because no matter how hard you try, you will never be enough for everyone. And that's not your fault. That's life. People see you through their own filters, their own fears, their own insecurities. You can't control their perception, but you can control your choices. Epictetus said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." Read that again. He didn't say be foolish. He said be okay with being seen that way. Why? Because growth often looks like rebellion to people who've given up on changing. Your boundaries might seem selfish to someone used to you being a doormat. Your ambition might be offensive to someone who's settled. Your peace might feel threatening to someone addicted to chaos. Let it. That's not your weight to carry. And honestly, let's talk about self-respect. It's easy to confuse it with ego, but they're not the same. Ego is about superiority. Self-respect is about alignment. It's about knowing where you stand, what you believe, and what you will and won't tolerate, even when it's inconvenient. Even when it's lonely, because there's a kind of peace that only comes when you stop abandoning yourself to gain the approval of people who wouldn't even recognize the real you if you showed up. Living with integrity, especially when it costs you something, is an act of belief. Belief that your truth matters, that your values matter, that your voice has weight, even if it's shaky, even if it goes against the crowd. That kind of belief builds resilience, and that resilience creates freedom. But let's be real. Being disliked doesn't always feel noble. Sometimes it feels like rejection, like loss. And you'll be tempted to soften your edges, to go back to being easy, agreeable, small. Don't. Because every time you choose to please the world instead of honoring yourself, you send a message to your soul that its voice doesn't matter. And over time, that voice gets quieter, until one day you wake up and realize you've built a life that looks good on the outside, but feels hollow on the inside. That's not success. That's self-abandonment. Seneca warned, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality, and often the fear of being disliked is more painful than the reality of it." Because the truth is, most of the people who reject you for being real, they were never truly with you to begin with. They were with the version of you that made them comfortable. When you stop performing, their attachment fades, and that's a blessing. It clears space for people who see you, get you, and respect you, not for what you pretend to be, but for who you actually are. So what does this look like in real life? It looks like saying no when you mean no, even if it disappoints someone. It looks like speaking up when something feels wrong, even if your voice shakes. It looks like choosing rest over hustle, boundaries over burnout, authenticity over approval. It looks like letting go of the need to be liked and replacing it with the intention to be real. You won't get it perfect. No one does. You'll still catch yourself shrinking sometimes. Still feel that urge to explain, to justify, to win people back. That's okay. You're human. But every time you choose yourself over performance, you grow stronger. Every time you say, "This is who I am, and I'm okay if not everyone likes it," you reclaim your power. The Stoics didn't chase comfort. They chased courage. And courage often looks like walking away from the crowd, standing tall in your values, and being okay with the fact that not everyone will understand you. That's not arrogance. That's freedom. That's self-respect. And in the end, it's better to be hated for being real than loved for being fake. Better to walk alone in truth than surrounded by people who only know your mask. Better to build a life that feels right on the inside, even if it looks strange from the outside. Because approval fades, applause dies down. But self-respect, that stays. And that is everything. 9. Confusion means you're growing. You know that weird, uncomfortable feeling when nothing makes sense anymore. Like your routines don't fit, your goals don't excite you, and the life you built doesn't feel like it's yours anymore. That's not failure. That's the edge of transformation. That's the moment just before something cracks open inside you. And yeah, it feels messy. It feels like doubt. It feels like standing in a fog without a map, wondering how you got here and where you're going. But believe it or not, that's progress. That's life waking you up from the autopilot you didn't even know you were stuck in. Most people think growth looks like confidence, clarity, and momentum. But the truth, growth often starts with confusion. Carl Jung once said, "In all chaos there is a cosmos. In all disorder, a secret order." And that couldn't be more true. The chaos you feel, the disorientation, it's not a sign that you're broken. It's a sign that your old way of seeing things no longer works. That's why it feels like everything's shifting, because it is. The Stoics would tell you not to fear this feeling. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." In other words, the struggle you're facing right now, the confusion, the doubt, the feeling of being stuck, isn't the enemy. It's the path. It's how your mind says, "We're not in alignment anymore." And once you recognize that, you can start making real change. But first, let's clear something up. Just because you're confused doesn't mean you're failing. You're not lost, you're recalibrating. Think of it like this. Your internal compass is spinning because your old coordinates no longer lead to where you want to go. That's not weakness, that's evolution. This isn't about rushing to figure everything out. It's about staying present in the fog, allowing yourself to ask the hard questions, not to punish yourself, but to understand yourself. Questions like, who am I becoming? What do I actually want? What have I outgrown, even if I'm scared to admit it? These aren't easy questions, but they're necessary ones. And it's in the asking, not always in the answering, that you begin to grow. The Stoics never promised that life would feel easy. What they promised was that your mind could become strong enough to handle whatever life throws at you. Epictetus taught that we don't control what happens, we control how we respond. And sometimes the best response is to pause, to sit with the confusion instead of trying to fix it right away. Because maybe it's not meant to be fixed. Maybe it's meant to be felt so you can grow through it. Growth doesn't always look like hustle or visible success. Sometimes it looks like unraveling, like pulling apart the beliefs that used to define you, like realizing the dreams you once chased no longer speak to your soul. And that's terrifying, but it's also freeing, because now you're no longer tied to a version of yourself that no longer fits. You're free to choose again, to evolve, to rebuild. That's the beauty of confusion. It humbles you. It slows you down. It forces you to listen, to stop pretending you have it all figured out. And in that space of uncertainty, you find clarity that's deeper, truer, and more rooted than any quick fix ever could be. So if you're feeling lost, take a breath. Don't rush to escape it. Don't numb it with distractions or bury it under false positivity. Sit with it. Ask what it's trying to show you. Because this isn't the end. It's the in-between. The cocoon before the wings. The breakdown before the breakthrough. And yeah, it's going to feel uncomfortable. But you can handle that. You were built for this. The Stoics practice this mindset daily. The idea that suffering isn't the enemy, but the teacher. That discomfort isn't weakness, but an opportunity. That every time you face the unknown with courage, you come out stronger. So here's the takeaway. Confusion is not the problem. It's the beginning of awareness. The moment you stop blindly repeating the past and start waking up to your own potential. The fog doesn't mean you're off track. It means you're about to shift tracks entirely into something better, something deeper, something real. Let it unfold. Let yourself feel it all. The doubt, the fear, the hope, the stretch. It's all part of the process. You're not broken, you're breaking through. And on the other side of that confusion is a version of you who's more aligned, more grounded, and more alive than you've ever been. 10. You're not the only one, and that's good news. There's something strange about pain. When you're deep in it, it makes you feel like the only person on the planet who could possibly understand what you're going through. Like no one else has ever felt this exact kind of heartbreak, confusion, shame, or emptiness. And the world doesn't make it easier, because on the surface, everyone else seems to be doing just fine. People are smiling, achieving, posting their wins, laughing in highlight reels. Meanwhile, you're just trying to breathe through the weight on your chest. But here's the truth that most people won't say out loud. You are not alone in this, not even close. Whatever you're carrying right now, someone else has carried it too. And they didn't just survive, they grew. Pain has a way of isolating us. It tricks the mind into believing, no one gets this, I'm the only one. Or worse, something's wrong with me for feeling this way. But that's a lie. The human condition is not one of perfection. It's one of struggle, resilience, and healing. The Stoics, some of the wisest minds in history, were never strangers to hardship. Marcus Aurelius battled grief, political betrayal, and personal illness. Yet he still wrote, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment. That's not just a quote for motivation posters. It's a reminder that you are not powerless, even in your darkest moments. And look, this isn't about downplaying what you're going through. Your pain is valid. Your emotions are real. But what you need to know is this. You're not broken, and you're not a mistake. You're experiencing something profoundly human. Carl Jung said it beautifully. Loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you. That's why hearing someone else say, yeah, I've felt that too, can hit you like a wave of oxygen after drowning. Because what we crave, more than fixes, more than answers, is connection, the kind that makes us feel seen. And throughout history, people have always gone through what you're going through now. Heartbreak, loss, failure, uncertainty, anxiety. These aren't new problems. They're old truths dressed in modern clothing. What you're facing has been faced before, and not just endured, but transcended. You are part of a long, unbroken line of souls who've walked through darkness and emerged with more clarity, more strength, more compassion than they had before. This is the path of becoming, of unfolding into who you truly are. And pain, as much as we wish it weren't, is part of that journey. Seneca once wrote, "We are waves of the same sea." That image matters. Because when you realize you're not a separate storm, but a wave in the larger human experience, something shifts. You start to realize that your suffering doesn't isolate you. It connects you. Every struggle you've had mirrors someone else's silent battle. Every tear you've shed echoes in another person's memory. And maybe that's the point. To stop pretending we're islands and remember that we're human, together. Sometimes the most powerful form of healing is knowing that someone else made it through, that someone else stared down their shame, faced their fear, walked through loss, or rebuilt after destruction, and found peace on the other side. Not because they were special, but because they chose not to give up. They chose to keep breathing, keep moving, keep choosing life, even when it didn't make sense. You can do that too. In psychology, this is what's known as universality, the healing that comes from realizing your struggles are not unique. It's not about minimizing what you're going through. It's about understanding that your suffering has context, that it fits into the larger story of human resilience. You are not weird or weak or cursed. You are human. You are feeling something countless others have felt before and survived. And you know what's wild? Someday, your story could be the one that helps someone else. The pain you're navigating right now might one day become the reason someone else decides not to quit. Your strength, forged in quiet battles, tear-stained nights, and unspoken fears, could be the light someone else needs. And that doesn't mean you have to have it all figured out. You just have to keep going, one breath, one step, one moment at a time. The Stoics would tell you that adversity is not your enemy, it's your training ground. It's the forge where character is made. Epictetus said, "Difficulties are things that show a person what they are." And that's not just about grit, it's about depth. Every challenge you face deepens your capacity for empathy, patience, wisdom, and strength. That doesn't make the pain feel good, but it does make it meaningful. So the next time you hear that voice in your head saying, "You're the only one," talk back. Say, "No, I'm one of many." One of many people learning to love themselves after loss. One of many finding purpose through pain. One of many discovering who they really are beneath the performance and pressure. You're not an outlier. You're part of the story, and it's still unfolding. Don't isolate. Don't hide. Don't let shame convince you that you're the only one struggling. You're not. You're surrounded, even if you can't see it, by millions of others who have felt the same things, thought the same thoughts, wrestled with the same fears, and many of them have made it through. So can you. Being human means hurting, but it also means healing. And sometimes the most important thing you can do, the bravest thing, is to remind yourself that your pain connects you, not separates you, that you're not alone, and that you're going to make it through, just like others before you, just like others beside you. 11. Comfort makes you soft. Discomfort makes you sharp. We all love comfort. Let's be honest about that. The warm bed, the predictable routine, the soothing rhythms of things staying exactly the same. They feel safe. They feel earned. But here's the catch. Stay in that comfort too long and something starts to slip. You don't notice it at first. But slowly, your ambition dulls, your clarity fades, your energy dips. You start feeling off. Not because something's wrong, but because nothing's pushing you forward. And growth? Real, powerful, lasting growth. That only happens on the edge of discomfort. We live in a culture that worships convenience. Everything's optimized to make life easier, quicker, softer. But that ease comes with a cost. When you shield yourself from every challenge, you don't grow. You weaken. Your mind gets lazy. Your body gets sluggish. Your willpower erodes. Carl Jung had a similar view. He said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." That's not a call to seek suffering for its own sake. It's a reminder that without tension, you don't evolve. Think of your muscles. If you never lift anything heavy, they shrink. If you want them to grow, you have to give them resistance. Same with your mind. Same with your spirit. Same with your courage. Discomfort isn't the enemy. It's the weight you lift to become sharper, stronger, better. But it's not just about being tough or chasing struggle. It's about what discomfort reveals. When things get hard, your excuses show up. Your habits get exposed. Your mindset is tested. You see where you fall back into fear, where you cut corners, where you cling to what's easy instead of what's right. And that awareness, that's gold, because you can't change what you won't confront. Discomfort gives you a mirror, one that comfort will never hand you. Comfort loves to waste your time. It whispers, "Take it easy," when you should be moving. It tells you to rest when you haven't earned it. It tricks you into thinking safety equals happiness, but you know better. Some of the best moments of your life didn't come from ease. They came from effort, from facing fear, from pushing through, from doing the thing you weren't sure you could do, and coming out stronger on the other side. You don't get sharp by avoiding the grind. You get sharp by meeting it, day after day. When you feel the urge to quit, and you keep going anyway. When you face rejection and still speak your truth. When you feel fear and act with courage. That's where your edge lives. Not in the comfort zone, but right outside it. Not in the place where everything is controlled, but in the moments where you take the risk, do the hard thing, and grow. This doesn't mean you have to turn your whole life upside down overnight. It means you stop running from what's uncomfortable. You lean into it, little by little. Maybe that's a hard conversation you've been avoiding. Maybe it's waking up earlier to chase your goals. Maybe it's saying no when people expect you to say yes. Discomfort looks different for everyone, but the power's always the same. You meet it, you learn, you level up. You can choose how you see discomfort. You can frame it as punishment or as training. You can resent it or respect it. When you stop seeing discomfort as a threat and start seeing it as an invitation, everything changes. You stop shrinking from life. You start meeting it. The Stoics practiced this daily, not just in words, but in habits. They would imagine losing everything, not to depress themselves, but to stay mentally sharp. They fasted, slept on the floor, exposed themselves to cold, practiced poverty, not because they had to, but because they knew that true strength comes from being prepared. From knowing, deep in your bones, that you can handle anything life throws at you. That's not toughness, that's peace, the kind of peace that can't be shaken. Here's the thing, life will challenge you, whether you train for it or not, whether you're ready or not. You don't get to choose that. What you do get to choose is how you respond. Do you hide in comfort and hope the storm passes? Or do you strengthen your foundation so the storm has nothing to tear down? Discomfort builds that foundation. It's the only thing that does. So if you're feeling stretched, tested, pushed, good. You're in the arena. You're forging something real. You're shedding what's soft, lazy, reactive, and stepping into what's clear, focused, and unshakable. Don't run from it. Don't numb it. Use it. Your edge isn't found in comfort. It's revealed in resistance. That's where the real you shows up. Not the version that pleases everyone or plays it safe or stays quiet, but the version that moves through the fear, does the hard thing, and keeps going anyway. And that version, that's the one worth building every single day. 12th, anger. Usually means you feel powerless. There's a moment, you've probably felt it, when something or someone crosses a line and your whole body tightens, your jaw locks, your chest feels hot, words rush to your tongue, fists maybe clench, and there it is, anger, powerful, sharp, loud, and in that flash, it feels righteous, justified, like finally you're standing up, like you're in control. But here's the twist. Most of the time, you're not. Because beneath that anger, more often than not, is something quieter, something raw, powerlessness, that heat you feel. It's not always about what was said or done. It's about feeling like you weren't seen, like you were helpless, embarrassed, hurt. And anger became the shield you threw up to hide the softer truths underneath. This is hard to admit because anger gives the illusion of strength. It makes us feel like we're taking the wheel, when in reality, it's often our pain driving. Stoicism teaches us to pause in that space, to not take the emotion at face value, but to question it. The person who triggers us is often just a mirror, a reflection of our unhealed parts. The friend who dismisses us, the boss who overlooks us, the partner who doesn't listen, they're all tapping into something deeper, something we may not have words for yet. And when we feel powerless to change it, the fire comes, not always because we want to destroy, but because deep down we want to be heard. But here's where it gets powerful. Anger isn't bad. It's not something to fear or suppress. It's just not meant to be your steering wheel. It's a signal, a flare, a message that something inside you feels violated or misunderstood. And if you can sit with it, not act on it, not project it, but sit with it, you'll learn what it's trying to show you. That's where real strength begins, not in the outburst, but in the awareness that precedes it. The Stoics believed that emotions should never be ignored. They should be examined. Epictetus taught that we should never say, "I am angry," but rather, "An impression of anger is occurring." That shift in language matters. It creates space, space to breathe, space to think, space to respond instead of react. And in that space, you reclaim your power, not by controlling others, but by understanding yourself. Think about a time you lashed out and immediately regretted it, not because your feelings weren't valid, but because your reaction didn't match the part of you that wants to grow. That gap between what you feel and how you act, that's your training ground. That's where you build emotional discipline, where you learn to respond with intention instead of impulse. In psychology, anger is often described as a secondary emotion. It's what rises to the surface, but underneath there's usually fear, sadness, betrayal, shame, or loneliness. So the next time you feel that fire rising, ask yourself, what's under this? Am I scared? Am I hurt? Am I feeling dismissed? This isn't weakness. This is self-honesty. This is what real warriors do. They don't just fight the enemy outside. They face the battles within. Seneca warned, "Anger, if not restrained, is frequently more hurtful to us than the injury that provokes it." That might sting to hear. But how many bridges have been burned in anger? How many relationships strained? How many opportunities missed? How many nights lost to replaying that one moment where you let the emotions speak louder than your values? This isn't about guilt, it's about learning. Because every time you pause instead of explode, you reclaim a little more of your power. And here's the wild part. The more you build that inner calm, the less control other people have over you. When someone tries to provoke you and you stay grounded, that's power. When life throws chaos your way and you don't get swept up in the storm, that's real strength. Not the kind that postures or dominates, but the kind that radiates stability. The kind that other people feel and respect, even if they don't understand it. If you don't get curious about your anger, it will keep running the show from behind the curtain. You'll think you're reacting to the world when really you're reacting to old wounds, unresolved stories, unmet needs, making the unconscious conscious. That's how you shift. And again, none of this means you should stay silent when boundaries are crossed or injustices happen. But it does mean your voice is strongest when it's not fueled by reactivity, when it's grounded in clarity, not chaos, when it's anchored in values, not vengeance. So here's the challenge. The next time anger shows up, and it will, don't judge it. Don't stuff it down, but don't unleash it blindly either. Pause. Ask what it's pointing to. Ask what it's protecting, and choose what comes next. That choice, that moment of awareness, is the space where growth happens. You don't need to be ashamed of your anger, but you don't have to be its prisoner either. Use it, study it, grow from it. Because every time you look beneath it and choose a better response, you're not just managing emotions, you're mastering yourself. And that's where true strength begins. 13. First impressions are usually lies. It's funny how fast the mind jumps. You walk into a room, see someone glance your way, and suddenly the thoughts start spinning. They don't like me, they're judging me. Or you get a message that's a little cold, and your brain whispers, they're mad. I must have done something wrong. The truth is, most of us are walking around reacting to assumptions, not reality. We're making snap judgments about people, situations, even ourselves, without ever questioning where those impressions come from. But here's the hard truth. Your first thought is often a lie, not because you're broken, but because your brain's job is to protect you, not to tell you the truth. See, the mind is a pattern-making machine. It runs on past experiences, old wounds, and fast survival instincts. That served us well back when every rustle in the bushes might have been a predator. But in modern life, that same brain chemistry can make us paranoid, anxious, or reactive, jumping to conclusions that don't serve us. This is where Stoicism shines like a spotlight. It teaches us to pause, to question our first reactions. Marcus Aurelius said, "If someone is able to show me that what I think or do is not right, I will happily change, for I seek the truth." That's the key. Not clinging to your first thought, but being willing to slow down and look deeper. Thoughtful reflection takes effort. It's easier to react than to reflect. But here's the trap. If you always trust your first impression, you'll go through life misreading people, misinterpreting situations, and misunderstanding yourself. That co-worker who seemed cold might just be shy. That text that felt passive-aggressive might have been typed in a rush. That failure you can't stop replaying might be setting you up for your biggest growth. This doesn't mean your instincts are useless. They're just not the full story. Think of your first thought as a headline. It grabs your attention, but it's not the whole article. You've got to read deeper, ask questions, test it. Is this true? Is there another way to see this? What else could be going on? When you slow down and check your thoughts instead of automatically trusting them, you get something precious: freedom. You stop being a prisoner of your mental autopilot. The Stoics were obsessed with this process of self-inquiry. Epictetus taught his students to question every impression. He said, "Don't just say you have read books. Show that through them you have learned to think better." That applies to everything, not just books, but experiences, conversations, and especially your thoughts. Real wisdom isn't about having fast opinions. It's about asking better questions. It's about choosing not to believe every idea that passes through your mind just because it feels convincing in the moment. Because let's be real, feelings can lie. You can feel abandoned and not be. You can feel like a failure and still be growing. You can feel certain someone's mad at you when really they're just tired. This is where emotional maturity kicks in. It's when you learn to pause and say, hold on, is this real or just my interpretation? That pause is powerful. That pause is Stoicism in action. There's also a kind of humility in admitting, I might be wrong. That takes strength. Most people get stuck because they're too proud to question themselves. But the Stoic path is about seeing clearly, not clinging tightly. How many times have you stressed yourself out over things that never even happened, all because you trusted the first impression your mind gave you, instead of stepping back and thinking it through? And this doesn't just apply to people or conversations, it applies to how you see yourself too. That voice in your head telling you you're not good enough, that's not truth, that's programming, conditioning, trauma, echoes from your past. And if you never slow down to examine those thoughts, you'll keep living like they're facts. But you can challenge them. You can choose to reframe. You can choose to see yourself with compassion instead of criticism. So many people are living their lives based on old beliefs they never stop to question. They keep reliving patterns, replaying pain, all because their first impression about themselves, about others, about life, went unchallenged. So what do you do instead? You slow down. You breathe. You become the observer of your mind, not just the passenger. You say, okay, my first thought is, they don't like me, but is that true? What evidence do I have? What else could this mean? You stop treating every mental impulse like gospel truth. You treat it like a draft, something to edit, to review, to refine. That's how you grow. That's how you stop repeating the same emotional loops and start living from clarity. Stoicism doesn't promise that you'll never misread something again. It promises something better, that you'll have the tools to catch yourself before your thoughts drag you into unnecessary suffering. That you'll build a mind strong enough to say, not every thought deserves a reaction. That you'll learn to trust your judgment, not because it's always right, but because you've trained it to be tested. You're going to have first impressions. You're going to feel sudden emotional jolts. That's human, but what you do with those impressions, that's where your power lies. That's where maturity lives. That's where Stoic peace is found. So next time your mind fires off a story, pause, challenge it, get curious. Because the truth you find after the pause, it's almost always clearer, calmer, and a whole lot more powerful than the lie you believed in the first 2 seconds. 14th, momentum is morality. There's this strange pressure we all feel, like before we do anything meaningful, we need to have it all figured out, like we can't move until the stars align, until the fear disappears, or until we've mapped out every step. But here's the truth no one really tells you. You don't need a perfect plan. You need movement. You need motion. One step, then another, then another. Because thinking, no matter how deep or clever, won't change your life. Action will. That's where real morality lives. Not in your theories or intentions, but in what you do, in how you move. The Stoics were crystal clear about this. Marcus Aurelius said, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be one." That quote alone cuts through every excuse. Don't talk about being disciplined, be disciplined. Don't talk about starting, start. Morality isn't this abstract philosophical concept. It's not a set of lofty ideals sitting on a shelf. It's what you do with your mornings. It's how you treat people when you're tired. It's whether or not you show up for yourself when no one else is watching. And the beauty of this idea is that it levels the playing field. You don't need to be a genius or a guru to live well. You just need to move, to take that uncomfortable step, even when your mind is screaming with doubts. That's where your character is forged, not in comfort or theory, but in movement. We all have dreams, goals, things we say we want. But how many of us actually take the steps? We're often stuck in our heads, spinning in circles, analyzing every outcome. And while we're waiting for the right moment, life moves on. Meanwhile, the person who takes messy, uncertain action starts building momentum, and that momentum becomes their strength. It's not about giant leaps. It's about micro decisions. Do I get up early and write today? Do I show up to the gym when I don't feel like it? Do I apologize even when it bruises my ego? These moments matter. They stack. They shape you. And over time, they form a kind of moral momentum, a rhythm of integrity, a way of living that aligns with what you believe in, not just what you think about when it's convenient. Seneca once said, "Only the wise man is content with what is his." All foolishness is a form of inconsistency. Inconsistency, that's the silent killer of so many good intentions. You say you want peace, but you engage in gossip. You say you want focus, but you scroll for hours. You say you want growth, but you resist every discomfort. It's not that your goals are wrong, it's that your movement doesn't match your mission. The Stoics believed that virtue is a verb. You don't become just by thinking about justice. You don't become courageous by imagining courage. You practice it, one decision at a time. And that practice builds momentum. The more you move in the direction of your values, the more natural it becomes. That doesn't mean it's always easy, but it does get clearer. Because the moment you choose action over overthinking, something clicks. You stop living in your head and start living in reality. Let's talk about the mind for a second. Your brain is a master storyteller. It loves to keep you safe. So the moment you think about doing something hard, it'll flood you with reasons not to. You're not ready. You'll fail. What will people think? That's not your truth talking. That's your fear talking. And the way you silence fear isn't by arguing with it. It's by moving anyway. One step, just one, even if it's clumsy, even if it's small. Momentum shuts fear up better than any pep talk ever could. And when you move, you feel it. That flicker of confidence, that sense of alignment, that quiet inner voice saying, yes, this is the path. And sure, the voice isn't always loud. Sometimes you won't hear it until after the fact. But that doesn't matter. What matters is that you took the step, because motion breeds clarity. You figure things out while moving, not before. That's how life works. So the next time you feel stuck, don't ask, what's the right thing to do? Ask, what's the next right thing I can do? What's one action, however small, that aligns with the person I'm trying to become? Maybe that's a difficult conversation. Maybe it's hitting publish on something you're scared to share. Maybe it's putting the phone down and going for a walk. Whatever it is, do it. Don't wait for confidence to show up. Let confidence catch up to your momentum. So here's the challenge. Stop waiting to feel ready. Stop obsessing over the plan. Take the step. Make the call. Write the page. Speak the truth. Do the workout. Hit the send button. Because when you start moving, you become someone new. Not all at once, but slowly, steadily. And that steady motion, that's your morality. That's your virtue in motion. Momentum is morality. Not because the act itself is always huge, but because choosing to act when it's easier to freeze, that is the moral battle. That is the discipline. That is the philosophy. And it's won not in grand gestures, but in small, consistent steps. So stop waiting for the moment. You are the moment, and the moment moves when you do. 15. Don't just quote wisdom, live it. You ever notice how easy it is to share a quote online, but how hard it is to live it out in real life? You scroll through your feed, see something from Marcus Aurelius or Epictetus and think, yeah, that's powerful. Maybe you repost it. Maybe you nod and feel seen. But then, later that day, someone cuts you off in traffic, or your coworker says something irritating, or life throws a curveball, and suddenly that quote, gone. The wisdom you shared, nowhere in sight. That's the gap between what we know and how we live, and that's the gap that Stoicism is meant to close. The Stoics weren't about building a library of cool quotes. They were about becoming the kind of person those words describe. Marcus Aurelius didn't write meditations to impress anyone. He wrote it to remind himself, daily, how to act when things got hard. Because knowing what's right means nothing if you don't live it. Reading about resilience is one thing. Being calm when your plans fall apart, that's another level. Stoicism, real Stoicism, lives in your choices. It shows up in how you carry yourself when it's not easy, when no one's clapping, when the only one watching is you. Carl Jung once said, "You are what you do, not what you say you'll do." That hits hard, because a lot of us say the right things. We talk about growth, discipline, peace. But what happens when it's 5 a.m. and the alarm goes off? Or when someone disrespects you and everything in you wants to lash out? Or when fear creeps in and you're tempted to run from responsibility? That's the moment that defines your character. Not the things you post or the books on your shelf, but the behavior you choose when your comfort is on the line. Seneca wrote, "Religion is not to be found in a book. It is to be found in the life we lead." And he wasn't just talking about spirituality. He meant philosophy too. These ideas we collect, they mean nothing until we embody them. That means showing up with honesty when it's easier to lie, staying grounded when everything feels chaotic, owning your mistakes instead of shifting blame. These aren't grand gestures, they're everyday choices, quiet acts of discipline, invisible moments of integrity. The modern world makes this hard, though. We're bombarded with content, endless advice, motivation clips, threads about how to be your best self. But the truth is, no amount of external input will change you unless you take it inward, unless you slow down and ask, am I living this? There's this idea in psychology called intellectualization. It's when we deal with emotional discomfort by overthinking instead of feeling or doing. Like, instead of addressing our fear, we study it. Instead of confronting a problem, we analyze it to death. It feels productive. But really, it's a delay tactic. So how do you make that shift? How do you move from quoting to living? Start small. Choose one idea, one virtue. Maybe it's courage, maybe it's self-control. And ask yourself, what would this look like in action today? Not tomorrow, not next week. Today, when you're stuck in traffic, when your partner annoys you, when you feel tempted to procrastinate, that's your practice field. That's where you train. Living with integrity doesn't mean perfection. It means alignment. It means that your values match your actions more often than not. It means owning it when you mess up, and then realigning, resetting, trying again. That's growth. That's virtue. The Stoics never claimed to be saints. They were humans, flawed, emotional, imperfect. But they tried, daily, deliberately. They fell short, but they kept coming back to the principles that guided them. Here's the thing. When you actually live out wisdom, something shifts. You start to trust yourself more. You feel grounded, steady, less swayed by the chaos around you, because now your peace isn't built on external applause. It's built on internal alignment, on the quiet, knowing that you're walking your talk. That kind of peace, it's rare and powerful. So the next time you read a powerful quote, pause. Ask, where is this showing up in my life? And if it's not, start there. Start living it. Start embodying it. Even if it's messy, even if it's slow, because that's the work. That's the whole point. Don't just collect wisdom, live it. Let it shape your days. Let it humble you, stretch you, refine you. Because the goal isn't to sound deep. The goal is to be real, to be true, to be someone who doesn't just talk about the light, but walks in it. And in a world full of noise, that's one of the most powerful things you can do. 16. Ordinary days. Build extraordinary lives. It's easy to romanticize change, to imagine that our lives will shift in some dramatic cinematic moment. One decision, one opportunity, one breakthrough that suddenly turns everything around. That's the version we're sold in movies. But real life, real transformation, it's far less glamorous. It doesn't happen with fireworks. It happens in silence, in repetition, in the ordinary, often overlooked hours that pass without applause. The truth is, your future isn't shaped in rare moments of intensity. It's sculpted in the slow, steady grind of everyday choices. We live in a world obsessed with highlights, with the flashy wins and the overnight success stories. But Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, "You must build up your life action by action and be content if each one achieves its goal as far as possible." It wasn't about perfection. It wasn't about doing something massive. It was about staying present, doing the next right thing, stacking one good action on top of another until a foundation is built, not for show, but for strength. Think about your own life. The moments that really changed you weren't always the loud ones. Sometimes they were quiet. That morning when you got up early, even though no one would have known if you slept in. That day you chose patience instead of snapping back. That boring Tuesday when you stuck to your routine instead of making an excuse. Those small choices, those are the ones that create your character. They're the bricks that build your future. But here's the catch. Even the things that used to feel magical begin to feel mundane when you do them consistently. And that's where many people quit. They expect passion to carry them, but it's discipline that does the heavy lifting. The difference between those who drift and those who grow isn't found in their talent. It's found in how they treat their boring days. Here's something that might sting a bit. If your life feels stuck, uninspired, or chaotic, it probably doesn't need some big external shift. What it needs is for you to show up to the basics with more consistency, to treat your ordinary days with the respect they deserve, because the habits you build when nothing special is happening, they're the ones that carry you through everything else. And yes, it gets boring. It gets repetitive. Sometimes it even feels pointless. But as Seneca wrote, "No man was ever wise by chance." Wisdom doesn't strike like lightning. It's formed slowly, shaped through lived experience, deepened through reflection, and reinforced through repetition. Wisdom and strength and peace and success are all earned on the days you feel like skipping the work, but do it anyway. We tend to think that the extraordinary is made in extraordinary ways. But most often it's not. It's born in the days you show up with no recognition, no cheerleaders, no big moment, just you, your values, and your commitment. That's how you become someone others admire. Not by doing something once, but by becoming someone reliable, someone stable, someone who does the right thing, even when it's not exciting. Jung once noted, "The greatest tragedy of the family is the unlived lives of the parents." That line is haunting because it reminds us that drifting through life, coasting, surviving, comes at a cost, not just to us, but to those around us. When we abandon the daily disciplines that give life shape, we also abandon the example we could have set. That doesn't mean being perfect. It means living fully. It means understanding that showing up on a random Wednesday matters more than you think. There's a certain freedom in this idea too, because you don't have to wait for the right time. You don't need the stars to align. You just need today, this day. However ordinary it may be, that's where your life is happening. That's where your identity is being formed. If you treat every ordinary day like it doesn't matter, don't be surprised when you look up in a year and your life still looks the same. But if you treat every ordinary day like it is the work, like it's sacred in its own way, you'll build something real, something that lasts. The Stoics believed in living according to nature, and part of that meant living rhythmically, not chaotically, understanding the seasons of life, embracing the mundane as part of the path. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that the body needs food, the mind needs clarity, and the soul needs purpose. Every day, not just on holidays, not just during big life moments, but in the quiet, repeated actions that make up most of our existence. So, what does this look like for you? Maybe it's doing the morning walk, even when you're tired. Maybe it's choosing gratitude when your brain wants to complain. Maybe it's reading something nourishing instead of scrolling endlessly. Maybe it's pausing before reacting, breathing before speaking, thinking before quitting. Whatever it is, it's within your control. That's what the Stoics hammered home again and again. Focus on what you can control, and what you can always control is how you show up today. There's no lightning bolt coming to change your life, no perfect moment to finally begin. There's just now, just this moment, and this one, and the next. Stack enough of them, and you won't just have a better week or month. You'll have a better life, a real one, not built on fantasy or flash, but on foundation, on strength, on quiet consistency. So don't underestimate your ordinary days. Don't sleep on the power of showing up, even when it feels boring. Because while the world is chasing hype and waiting for the big break, the wise, the Stoic, is building something deeper, something rooted, something unshakable. Extraordinary lives aren't born in a single moment. They're built, brick by brick, day by day. Let today be one of them. 17. I don't know is a power move. There's something oddly terrifying about saying the words, I don't know. It feels like admitting weakness, like you've just exposed a crack in your armor. From school to work to social media debates, we're taught that knowing everything, or at least pretending to, is how you gain respect. But what if that's all backwards? What if constantly having to appear certain is actually what keeps you small? The truth is, saying I don't know isn't a weakness. It's one of the most powerful things you can say, because it takes courage, it takes self-awareness, and more than that, it keeps you open. The Stoics were obsessed with self-mastery, and part of that was staying humble in the face of complexity. Epictetus said, "It is impossible for a person to begin to learn what he thinks he already knows." Read that again. Because if your ego is always trying to prove how smart or right or enlightened you are, guess what it's not doing? Learning, listening, growing. I don't know is a door. When you say it, you give yourself permission to walk through that door and actually figure something out. Not just repeat what you've heard, not just echo the loudest voice in the room, but understand for yourself. Carl Jung once said, "In each of us there is another whom we do not know." And if that's true, if even we don't fully understand ourselves, how could we possibly have all the answers about the world, about other people, about what's coming next? We're all blind in some way. We're all guessing more often than we admit. And ironically, the people who embrace this tend to be the most grounded, because they're not fighting to maintain a false image. They're too busy growing. Think about how much pressure gets lifted the moment you stop pretending. You don't have to be an expert on every topic. You don't have to act like you've figured out life. You can just say, "I don't know, but I'm willing to learn." That phrase is magnetic. It draws in better teachers, better conversations, better insights. Because when you're teachable, you become dangerous, in the best way. You start absorbing wisdom from places most people miss. You become adaptable, which in a chaotic world is a superpower. Marcus Aurelius, in all his wisdom and power, still reminded himself, "If someone can prove me wrong and show me my mistake, I will gladly change." That's an emperor of Rome, the most powerful man in the known world, writing in his personal journal that he was willing to be corrected. That's humility. That's real strength. And it stands in stark contrast to the fake confidence we often see today, where people cling to being right, even when it's ruining relationships, opportunities, and peace of mind. So many conflicts, online, in relationships, at work, come from this desperate need to be certain. But when you strip that away, when you can look someone in the eye and say, "I honestly don't know, but I'd like to understand more," everything changes. Defenses drop, walls come down, real dialogue starts, because now you're not battling for superiority. You're connecting over curiosity. You're making space for something new to grow. "I don't know" also applies inward. Sometimes we feel pressured to know exactly where we're going, what we want, what every step should look like. But life doesn't hand out maps. It unfolds, one moment at a time. It's okay to admit you're still figuring it out. In fact, it's better than okay. It's wise. As Seneca said, "As long as you live, keep learning how to live." That's not a failure. That's the point. It's wild how much we idolize the know-it-all persona, the ones who always have a clever answer, the ones who speak first and loudest. But knowledge without humility turns into arrogance, and arrogance keeps you stuck. The Stoics weren't just about intellect, they were about wisdom. And wisdom means knowing when to speak, when to listen, and when to say, "That's outside my understanding right now," not to shut down, but to stay open. There's also something peaceful about not needing to carry the weight of being right all the time. You no longer fear being questioned. You don't panic when someone challenges your belief, because you're not fragile, you're curious. You're grounded enough in your values to admit where the edges of your knowledge are, and strong enough to expand those edges over time. And let's be real, a lot of people pretend to know just to avoid feeling vulnerable. But vulnerability is where growth lives, because sometimes saying "I don't know" isn't about a fact or opinion. It's about facing ourselves, our uncertainty, our doubt, our unfinished inner work. And most people avoid that like the plague. But not you. Not if you're serious about becoming the strongest version of yourself. Here's the kicker. The more you grow, the more you'll say, "I don't know." Not because you're getting dumber, but because you see more. You realize how vast and layered life is. You respect nuance. You understand that every situation has context. Every truth has depth. And you want to go deeper, not just sound clever. So next time you're in a conversation and you feel the urge to blurt out an answer just to sound smart, pause. Ask yourself, am I speaking from truth or ego? And if the truth is that you don't know, own it. Say it with your chest. Because in that moment, you're not just admitting ignorance, you're demonstrating strength. You're choosing truth over performance, growth over pride. And you know what happens when you live that way? You evolve, faster, deeper, more honestly. You attract people who value depth over image. You create space in your mind for new insights, new perspectives, new wisdom. You stop being a defender of your current level and start being a student of the next. So remember this, "I don't know" is not the end of your authority. It's the beginning of your wisdom. Don't be afraid to say it. Don't be afraid to live it. That sentence might just be the most powerful thing you'll ever learn to say. 18. Let go of what you can't control. Some battles aren't meant to be fought, not because you're weak, but because they're not yours to begin with. We spend so much time and energy trying to fix, change, or control things that were never in our hands. People's opinions, the past, the future, the weather, the traffic, the way someone spoke to you 3 days ago. It's like trying to hold back the tide with your bare hands, exhausting, useless, and a little bit tragic. And yet, we keep doing it. Why? Because it gives us the illusion of control. But that illusion comes at a cost, our peace. The Stoics made this one of their core teachings. Epictetus said it plainly: some things are up to us and some things are not. That's it. That's the foundation. The key to emotional freedom is recognizing the line between what's yours and what's not. Most people blur that line. They try to manage other people's reactions. They spiral over outcomes they can't predict. They stay up at night trying to solve problems that don't even belong to them. But once you get clear, once you start filtering every stress through the lens of, is this mine to carry? Life gets a lot lighter. Let's be honest. Control feels good. It makes us feel safe, like we're steering the wheel of life. But often, it's a mask for fear. Fear of uncertainty, fear of being hurt, fear of being misunderstood or overlooked. Letting go doesn't mean giving up. It means choosing where your energy goes. It means saying, this isn't in my hands, and I'm not going to let it ruin my peace. It's not easy. Sometimes it feels impossible. You care about someone, and they're making destructive choices. You work hard, and the results still don't come. You plan everything perfectly, and life throws you a curveball anyway. But that's the point. Life will always be unpredictable. People will always be imperfect. Circumstances will always shift. If your peace is tied to controlling all of that, you'll be in a constant state of tension. But if your peace comes from within, from aligning your attention with what you can influence, then you become steady, even in chaos. Here's the trick. Start noticing where your attention goes. When you feel anxious, ask yourself, is this something I can actually control? If the answer is no, that's your signal to breathe and let it go. Redirect your focus to what's within your circle, your actions, your attitude, your mindset. As Seneca wrote, he suffers more than necessary who suffers before it is necessary. Most of what we worry about never even happens. And even when it does, worrying didn't prevent it. It just made us suffer twice. This idea doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you care wisely. You focus on what's effective. You show up where you have agency, and you release what's beyond your influence. Imagine how much calmer your days would feel if you stopped trying to predict other people's reactions. If you stopped reliving mistakes you can't undo. If you stopped fighting every unexpected twist like it was a personal attack. That's not surrender, that's strategy. That's how you conserve energy for what actually matters. You are not defined by the chaos around you. You are defined by what you choose to do with it. When someone cuts you off in traffic, you get to choose whether you carry that irritation all day. When a friend disappoints you, you get to choose whether you stew in resentment or set a boundary and move forward. When the future feels uncertain, you get to choose whether you freeze in fear or take one solid step anyway. These choices, though small, are everything. Letting go isn't a one-time decision, it's a daily practice. You'll have to keep reminding yourself, this isn't mine to fix. This isn't worth my peace. It takes self-awareness. It takes discipline. It takes a commitment to your mental clarity over your ego's need to control. But the reward? Peace that doesn't depend on everything going right. Confidence that doesn't depend on everything being known. Power that doesn't need to dominate, but simply chooses. And that's the real freedom. Not a life without pain or conflict, but a life where you're no longer at the mercy of it. A life where you don't need to micromanage the universe to feel calm. You just need to master your responses, stay grounded in your values, and let the rest fall where it may. So, start today. Pick one thing that's been weighing on your mind, something you've been gripping tightly, even though you know it's outside your control, and let it go, not with anger, not with bitterness, just with clarity, just with trust. You've got enough to carry already. Don't waste your strength on what's not yours. As the Stoics would say, the obstacle is not in the storm, it's in your reaction to it. You can't stop the rain, but you can choose to walk through it with peace. 19. You become what you practice daily. It's wild how we underestimate the power of what we do every single day. We obsess over goals, what we want to become, where we want to go, the kind of person we want to be remembered as. But in all that dreaming, we forget something crucial. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your habits. Who you are isn't built by what you say you want once in a while. It's carved out by what you do consistently, especially when no one's watching. Your life is the result of tiny choices repeated over time. The way you talk to yourself, how often you show up late or on time, whether you reach for your phone first thing in the morning or take a breath and pause. These small moments don't seem like much on their own, but together they form a pattern, and that pattern becomes your character. It becomes your destiny. The Stoics understood this better than most. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You become what you give your attention to." Read that again. He didn't say you become what you want. He said you become what you focus on, what you feed, what you practice. We like to think our identity is something fixed, something given at birth, or tied to our personality type or past experiences. But identity is much more fluid than that. We've all had moments where we talked a big game about becoming more disciplined, more mindful, more present, only to fall back into the same old cycles. And there's no shame in that, but there's also no progress until we get honest. What we practice is what we become. Let's say you practice complaining every day, even just in your head. That becomes your reflex. You get better at spotting the bad in every situation. You train your mind to expect disappointment. On the flip side, if you practice gratitude, not just as a one-time journal entry, but as a lens you use daily, you wire your brain to see opportunity. You train your heart to feel lighter. The same goes for discipline, or patience, or chaos. Whatever you water grows. And here's the truth nobody wants to say out loud. You're already practicing something, even if it's unconscious. Every time you procrastinate, you're training your nervous system to delay discomfort. Every time you criticize yourself, you're reinforcing a belief that you're not enough. Every skipped workout, every unspoken boundary, every hour lost in distractions, it's all practice. The question is, are you practicing the life you actually want to live? The Stoics believed in the power of repetition. They didn't see philosophy as something to study in a book once and then move on. It was a daily rehearsal. Think about how athletes train. They don't just show up on game day hoping their mindset will magically be sharp. They rehearse over and over, even when it's boring, even when no one's cheering. That's what builds real skill. The same applies to your mindset, your relationships, your work ethic. If you want to be more focused, you've got to practice cutting out distractions daily. If you want more peace, you've got to practice letting go daily. You don't become wise just because you read a quote. You become wise when you practice applying it in traffic, in arguments, in the quiet moments where old habits try to sneak back in. Jung also said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." That one's a gut punch, because if we're not aware of what we're practicing, what we're repeating, we'll blame life for outcomes we quietly rehearsed for years. That sense of being stuck, it's not fate, it's repetition. It's the consequence of unconsciously practicing a pattern that no longer serves you. But once you see it, once you take responsibility for what you're rehearsing, everything changes. You start to rewrite the script. And the beauty of all this, you don't have to wait for a new year or some magical turning point. You can pivot right now. Start small. Choose one habit that reflects your future, not your past, and practice it. Not because you're trying to be perfect, but because every rep shapes your identity. One walk instead of scrolling. One glass of water instead of another soda. One honest conversation instead of avoidance. It all adds up. The Stoics would remind us that virtue isn't just an idea. It's a habit. You become more courageous by doing courageous things. You become more disciplined by practicing self-control, not once, but repeatedly. They didn't separate thought from action. They knew that a person becomes their rhythm, their behavior, their discipline, not their good intentions. So if you ever feel lost, unsure of who you're becoming, don't look to the big milestones. Look to your mornings. Look to what you practice when no one's clapping. That's where your identity is being formed. That's the truth. And it's a liberating one, because it means you don't have to wait. You're not stuck. You're in rehearsal. So the next time you catch yourself thinking, I'm just this kind of person, stop and ask, what am I practicing that's making me that way? Then choose better, practice better, and with time you'll become better, not in theory, but in truth. 20. Every moment is a chance to begin again. Sometimes we act like life runs on a timer, like there's this invisible deadline for figuring it all out. And if we mess up, if we miss a day, break a promise to ourselves, say the wrong thing, spiral into a bad habit, we act like it's all over, like we've failed for good. But here's something you probably need to hear. You can start over, right now, in this moment. You're not stuck. You're not too far gone. You're not defined by your worst day or your last mistake. Life doesn't hold grudges. It offers chances, again and again. The Stoics believed deeply in this idea. They didn't waste energy wishing they'd done things differently. They returned, always, to what could be done now. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." He didn't say that to scare people. He said it to wake them up, to remind us that every moment is a clean slate if you treat it like one. The past is gone. The future is uncertain. But the present? It's the only place you can act. And in that, there's deep power. We all stumble. We all drift. We all break our own rules sometimes. But the moment you realize you've lost your way, that's not a moment of shame. That's your invitation to return. Return to your values. Return to your clarity. Return to your breath, your presence, your purpose. Think about nature for a second. The sun rises every single day, no matter how dark the night was. Trees shed their leaves in the fall, stand bare in the winter, and still come back to life in the spring. They don't panic when they lose their leaves. They don't rush to bloom. They trust the rhythm of starting again. And so can you. You don't need to make some dramatic comeback. You just need to make a decision to begin again, quietly, intentionally, from right where you are. There's this common belief that progress has to be loud, that if you're not sprinting forward, you're failing. But the Stoics saw progress as something internal. They understood that a person who stumbles and gets back up is stronger than someone who never moved at all. Let's be real. Beginning again is hard. It takes humility. It takes courage. Because it means admitting you lost focus, that you gave in to fear, comfort, distraction, whatever it was. But starting again also means reclaiming your power. It means saying, this moment is mine. I'm not going to waste it. And the more you practice that, the more you get comfortable with falling and rising, the stronger you get. Not just in discipline, but in self-trust. You stop fearing failure because you know you can always find your way back. We often treat our goals like they're made of glass, like one crack ruins everything. But growth is not linear. Life is not tidy. You will mess up. You will lose momentum. But the goal isn't perfection. The goal is persistence. It's becoming the kind of person who always circles back to what matters, who knows how to pause, breathe, reset, and start again. Not because it's easy, but because it's worth it. Jung also said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, and becoming is not a one-time event. It's a constant unfolding. You don't just find yourself once and stay there. You keep discovering, shedding, evolving. Sometimes you take 5 steps forward and 3 back. Sometimes you stand still for months before something clicks. That's okay. That's real. The important thing is that you don't give up on yourself when the path gets foggy. So maybe you've been drifting. Maybe you've been stuck in old habits. Maybe you haven't felt like you in a while. That doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're human. But this moment right here, this breath you're taking right now, it's a doorway, and you get to decide what you bring with you into the next one. You don't have to carry the guilt. You don't have to rehearse the past. You just have to choose. Choose to begin again, gently, bravely, fully present. The Stoics weren't trying to be perfect. They were trying to live well, and they knew that living well meant returning to their principles over and over, no matter how many times they wandered. That's the real discipline. Not never slipping, but never staying down. Not clinging to what was, but responding to what is. So the next time you mess up, whether it's something small or something that shakes you, remember this: your power is in your return. Your strength is in your reset. Every moment is a doorway back to yourself. Every breath is a reminder that you're still here, still capable, still writing your story. You don't need permission. You don't need a fresh calendar or a new phase of life. All you need is a choice, and that choice is always within reach. So whatever it is, your health, your mindset, your peace, your purpose, pick it up again. Don't wait. Begin again. Right now. No matter how lost you feel, no matter how far off track you think you've gone, remember this: every breath you take is a fresh beginning. You're not behind. You're right on time. The world doesn't need your perfection. It needs your presence, your persistence, your quiet return to what matters. You are not broken. You are becoming. If this spoke to something deep in you, keep going. Don't stop here. Tap into your next step by watching one of the videos on the screen. It could be the reminder, the lesson, or the spark you didn't know you needed today. And from the bottom of my heart, thank you for being a part of Stoic Journal. This journey is yours, but you don't have to walk it alone.